Hi, friends. Welcome back to Feed the Sheep podcast. I'm your host, Kelsey Keeling with Balanced Ruminant Grazers. I'm a wife to my soulmate, Ryan, mother of 4, daughter of Christ, who is always working to be a Proverbs 31 woman. Join me as I share my passion for hair sheep by taking you along as we work to create a balanced sheep flock of Australian whites in South Central Kansas. I hope these episodes and conversations not only educate you, but inspire you to add our sheep to your farm someday. Now let's get to talking sheep. Austin, thank you so much for taking time out of your evening to talk with me. So let's go ahead and jump right in. So tell everybody where you're located at and how long you've been in sheep.
Sure. Yeah, thanks for having me. We are in East Central Ohio. I guess we're kind of spread out. We've got 5 different locations here, kind of across the probably about an hour and a half driving distance. And we have been in sheep. This is our 6th year. 6th year we've been doing it on our own. I've worked for some other ranchers who've had cattle and sheep, but on our own, this is year 6.
Okay, cool. That's what I knew that you guys had cattle. I don't remember when I started following you guys on Instagram, but I had seen the cattle and then all of a sudden I saw the sheep and I was like, didn't you make a big jump into sheep?
We
Yeah.
did.
Okay,
Yeah.
we'll have to talk about that later and
Okay.
your transition into that. But so then talk a little bit about your overall operation because you guys run on leased land, is that correct? Or do you have some that's on
Yes.
your home base?
Yes.
Yeah.
I should say yes, we're all leased.
Okay.
We don't own any of the ground that we farm. That's a long-term goal of ours, but just starting out, it's just it ties up too much capital and it's just too expensive. It's the value of land in this area, and unfortunately in most areas has gone so far past what you can produce on it that it's been very hard to justify buying it and trying to pay for it without some kind of alternative income or something other than livestock production.
Yeah.
So yes, we lease close to 8,000 acres, actually a little bit over 8,000 acres now, and it's we don't own any of it. It's all just leased from locals here. I think we have close to 20 different landowners that we lease from, and yeah, that's what we focus on.
Does that go back all the way to your cattle days? Like you started building that up then, those 20 leases?
Yeah, yeah, it was really neat. The ranches I was working on, I had told them from the very beginning, hey, I'm going to try to start leasing ground and going on my own. And as I when I finally got the first one, fortunately, it was big enough I could go on my own. But then I kind of had one foot in the door working for them, and then one foot in the door, doing this. It was the kind of a transition period where I had to get some more leases to really get on my feet. And they were very gracious to help me along in that stage. And we've just been adding more and more ground as we can. Um, and it's getting difficult. There's a lot of people trying to do this now, and Ohio has got a tremendous amount of strip mine ground that tends to be laying empty from the coal companies when they mine it for coal. So it's I think 10 years ago, if you were trying to start this, you could pick up quite a bit of ground, but now it's all getting picked up really quick, and
Really?
it seems to be in high demand.
Yeah. Goodness. I can't imagine. So like, yeah, I mean, you have relationships already with those people, so hopefully you're still good to go, but just I don't know. Yeah, that'd be something to navigate.
Yeah, it is, and it's definitely a risk. Like, I'm not advising anybody to do it this way. It's just because you are always at the risk of your lease ending. And
Uh-huh.
we do have, we have long-term leases, but the leases can still be ended if the landowner sells.
Mm.
So there's never a there's never a guarantee.
Yeah.
So you're always I wouldn't want to say it makes me lose sleep because we have enough landowners now that we're diversified enough that if we lose one or two, it's not the end of the world. Our bigger ones would definitely hurt, but we've got a diverse enough landowner portfolio now that it adds a little bit of stability.
Cool. Awesome. Um, okay, I wanted to go right in. My husband Ryan wanted to be here tonight, and then he had a church meeting, so he couldn't. I was like, you got to come and interview with me because I'm going to ask all these questions. Like I wanted him to be here, but he couldn't. But
That's
he
all
was
right.
saying that one of the questions that just I'm always interested to hear people's like what your vaccination protocol is and why. Because like we're 3 years into this, but we're still learning. Like this last year we had CD&T come up on a couple lambs that were healthy and we're like, oh shoot, like what do we do? And so I like to hear other people's opinion on what they do and why.
Yeah. Yeah.
So what do you guys do for that? Or
So
just
our
your overall vaccination program and inputs? Yeah.
so vaccinations specifically, we anytime we bring new sheep here, like if we're buying a new set of ewe lambs or ewes or whatever, um, we have a protocol for it. So they will come here, they'll get off the truck. We usually give them, depending on the schedule and the weather, we usually give them no more than a week before we run them through the chute. We look at everybody. We give them a CD&T vaccine, and depending where they came from, what their background was, we'll worm them.
Hmm.
Um, and worming can be a very controversial topic, and we can get into that later if you want to. But so that's what we do. Um, like within the first week, they get off the truck.
Okay.
After that, we will do the same thing. 30 days later, we go back through that same group and we booster that vaccine. And at that point, anybody that's looking at us wrong, like they don't have to be dying. If
Yeah.
they look at us wrong, they're gone. Because
Okay.
we have found that, especially with new sheep, when you're bringing something new to adapt to your environment, there's once they look sick, it's too late.
Yeah.
So we have a protocol of they get vaccinated the first week and typically wormed. And then from there, we try to build parasite resistance, but we give them a shot in the beginning. And this is all depending where they come from. Um, there's some exceptions to that worming protocol, but then yeah, a month later we get them in, and then we go through everybody. Like if anybody shows up with a bad foot, if anybody has lost any body condition in 30 days, or just anybody sneezes in the pen, and I'm threatening to sell them. I mean, literally, if they look at us wrong, they're gone, and that we have just had too many times when we bring new sheep in, especially if you're coming from like we have to go to the Western United States quite a bit to buy the volume that we're looking for. And when we bring that east, you're bringing it to a wetter environment with a much higher rainfall with different forages. If you don't get those early, they die. And it's just I'm in this business to make money, and I'm also not in this business to let any animals die on my farm. So I am very particular about, hey, nothing can fall out, and that's we learned this because it's happened to us, unfortunately.
Yeah.
I've seen sheep; they're so fragile, and they can go downhill really quick. Like you can one day you're there, and the next week they're looking sick, and it's like holy cow. Then you try to figure out what it is, and then you go doctor and you go start treating, and it's too late.
Yeah.
And so we have just had better luck having a system in place that kind of heads that off before it becomes a problem.
Yeah, yeah. And to touch on the wormer really quick, I had heard that too, that like even if you bring new sheep like lambs or something, they're bringing whatever parasite tolerance, I guess, from their own place to yours. Like it would be a good idea to worm them at least once. I know a lot of people are, the whole no wormer, never, ever. I'm
Yeah.
like, but what if you, I don't know.
Yeah.
I, yeah, I don't know if you,
Well, I on that note, I've killed a lot of ewes and especially, well, I shouldn't say ewes. I've killed a lot of ewe lambs doing
okay.
that.
Yeah.
It's very, very hard on a ewe lamb to go to a new environment,
Okay. See this.
especially if you're going to lamb them in the spring. Like you are taking that ewe lamb into her first lambing cycle. So she's got a lamb, which is a stressful environment or a stressful event. Now she's got to lactate as a ewe lamb. She's still trying to grow frame and body condition herself. And you're taking her into your peak heat of the summer and your peak parasites. It's
Mm,
like
okay.
you're not setting that ewe lamb up. So giving her a wormer just really helps her get through that.
Yeah.
And then I always tell people parasite resistance, it should be a 3-year goal.
Oh,
Like
okay.
anytime you get new sheep, like don't be afraid of worming them, especially when you first get them. And then maybe do a Famacha score on them. Look at their eyes, every 90 days or something, and do some selection. But just to say, hey, I'm not going to worm anything.
Yeah.
Um, I've done that, and I've killed a lot of sheep, and it's expensive. So
Yes. Yeah.
I think it's a long-term goal, and we have a group of ewes here that we have never wormed, or I'm sorry, we haven't wormed them in 6 years. Like
Mhm.
they have that ability, but we ease that into it. Like we didn't just rip the Band-Aid off in the beginning. We let them adapt to the fescue. We have some really endophyte infected fescue here that can be really hard on sheep, and getting them adapted to that and getting their rumen adjusted to everything. So worming is an area I give them grace, especially on ewe lambs, and especially the first year something comes here. It's like I said, all of this has to make money, and dead animals don't make money.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, that's why I want this podcast to be for people that like want it to be like a profitable business, not just in it for a hobby. We're making money on this. We're bringing home money for the family farm, you know.
Yeah, absolutely.
What about like other inputs do you guys do? Do you guys supplement in the winter? I can't remember. Or do you have enough forage that you just rotate?
So we're very blessed with a large land base. We have not fed a bale of hay or any kind of supplements since we've started. The only exception to that would be we've lambed a couple groups of ewes outside in January. So we fed some old junky hay just for them to lay on. They barely ate any of it. They just more or less was a place to get them up out of the snow and the wet, out of the moisture, I should say. So no, we pasture year round. It's we're able to do that because we have a lot of fescue, and our fescue typically will hold about 11% protein through the winter, and then it'll start dropping. Once you hit March, it'll drop a little bit, but then you're close enough to spring that we can carry through. So yeah, we don't our operation here, like we don't own a tractor, we don't have any equipment. We typically buy a supply of hay just in case. We'll pay the neighbors to set it out on high on a ridge, and when the time comes, we'll go cut the net wrap off and just push it over the hill with a four-wheeler. So we don't. I would love to own a tractor someday. My kids would love to have a tractor, but right now it just we aren't at that stage in our business where we can afford what I would consider a depreciating asset. We're fine without it right now, so I haven't been able to justify owning one yet.
Yeah, yeah. And later on, I want to talk about like what you think for large scale operations, like what you actually need.
Sure.
So scaling to profit, like in sheep. So you had cattle and you had dabbled in sheep, and then did you guys just jump all in? Or I can't remember how'd that transition go. Did you get like 1,000 sheep at one point? Like I want to know this story. Yeah.
We bought 1,200 ewe lambs. We sold our cow herd and bought 1,200 ewe lambs, and I'll just be honest, it was a disaster.
Yeah.
We when I said earlier, we did that. I recommend worming ewes and having a receiving protocol. We did not. We had 60 ewes. We had 60 ewe lambs in the beginning, and we ran them for 2 years, and they were awesome. We didn't have to touch them. We didn't have any problems. They were ready. They followed our cows around. They didn't get out of any fences. There was 60 ewes on like 1,600 acres following a cow herd. So they were never like, we had 2-strand cow fence that was 30 inches off the ground. They never touched, like they never had sheep out, nothing, no problem. So we were like, well, this is where we need to do. So let's sell the cows. And my personality is just like, well, it's just like, if we're going to do it, let's do it. So we jumped into this, and the reason I mentioned those protocols earlier is because we had a wreck. We bought ewe lambs, and it had nothing to do with the people we've sourced them from. It was our management. To give you a perspective, going into the next year, we lambed just over 1,400 head in April and May, and we had actually ultrasounded that group in like January, and we ultrasounded the first 200 ewes, and like 195 of them were bred. Okay. So they bred very well. Lambing came, we lambed very well, but between lambing and weaning, when we hit all of those ewe lambs, like when I mentioned earlier, we took all those ewe lambs into the summer, into the heat, into the parasites. They're still trying to grow. They're still trying to adapt. All this stuff, they just fell apart. And we lost probably 30% of our ewe lambs, and we ended up weaning like 150 lambs off of 1,400 ewes, or 1,400 ewe lambs. So to say it was a wreck was an understatement. Like, it almost cost us our business. And so it wasn't the sheep's problem. It was our management of them. And but I had come from this world where hey, we've got 60 of them. We don't have to
Yes.
do anything to them. Let's go buy another 1,200 of them, and that was just I was naive to it. I had no experience and I jumped in way too fast, way too quick. And I didn't know anything. And part of our struggle here has been, and part of the reason I'm willing to share this stuff and I want to help other people in this is there's not a lot of, especially like Ohio, and I'm getting to know more and more of them. But at the time, I didn't know anybody
Mm.
in the eastern United States running hair sheep on pasture at scale.
Yeah.
And so I didn't have anybody to call and I
Mm.
didn't have anybody to ask questions to. And I didn't know. So I was like, well, let's just do it and find out. So um, that year I learned more in that year about sheep than I have
Yeah.
I've learned more about sheep and business and risk and all these other things than I have ever had in my entire life. So anyway, it was a hard year. Um, it was like every time you go out there and something you go check. Like I literally couldn't go to the sheep. Like I couldn't go to the flock of sheep. I couldn't do it. Like mentally, there was every time you go out there, you'd find more dead ewes and more lambs. And it was like I don't even know what like we had we had bills to pay, we had loans to pay back, we had all these things coming. It's like holy, you're just watching your sheep die. It's like I don't even know what to do. And so anyway, we were able to make it out of that. The only good news is we had timed the sheep markets well,
Mm.
and sheep bred ewes were worth a pile of money that fall.
Okay.
So we were able to um, breed those ewes a little bit earlier, and we had to sell the majority of them to pay off some loans and operating costs, and because we didn't have any other operating income coming in because we had sold our cow herd. So we had to sell a bunch of ewes, and fortunately we timed it right and we're able to sell them for a lot more than we paid for them. And it kind of saved our butt on it, to be honest with you. And then we decided, well, there's still like we don't have any other option really. Let's do it again, but
We're all in already.
we already got a wreck. Let's
Yeah.
keep going. So, but the knowledge that we gained that year taught us so much, and we were able to do it again, but do it right this time, and take all the lessons that we learned and put them into practice. And so that was the start of our education, if you will. And we're still learning to this day. I don't think I will ever stop learning
I
about the
know.
management of hair sheep.
Yeah, yeah. That's what Ryan's trying to adapt, like, cow rule, or I started calling it sheep rules. There's sheep rules that you have to play by. It's not
Yeah,
cows anymore. Like, you're not going to get away with one poly and, so oh goodness. Well, yeah,
yeah,
I feel like a lot of people go into hair sheep or they've seen things of hair sheep and they're like, okay, like you just let the weak ones die or something. But like that's what we
yeah,
came up with this summer. We were like, I was like, oh, it's fine. There's just a bottom, there's always going to be a bottom tier. And Ryan's like, no, I think we need to do something. And thankfully we went into action. But I feel like a lot of people are like, oh, they'll just die and I don't know. There's a balance there that I feel
yeah.
like you have to come up with or find.
Yeah, absolutely. Like as a steward of our animals, I don't ever want anything to die.
Yeah, yeah.
Uh, but there is a level like there's a natural selection that will take the weaker end, especially in sheep, and that's why the good Lord made them have twins and triplets and quads because it's like lambing. We'll almost always drop a 200% lamb crop.
Hmm.
But weaning, I will tell you right now, I probably will never wean 180% lamb crop. Like
Yeah.
they die, and that's by design for some reasons. And
Yeah.
so yeah, there's an animal husband, or I should say a responsibility that we had to do what we can. But with sheep, there will always be something falling out. At least that's the way it feels.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Definitely. Did you guys go? I had seen that you guys had been ranching for profit. Did you guys do that in that time? Like when
We
everything.
we did it. Um, Part of the reason we sold our cow herd, we did it before that we had the wreck
Oh, okay, okay.
because I went and I really dug into my gross margins on comparing a cow herd to a flock of sheep,
Okay.
and for us those numbers were triple. I mean, it was like, yeah, we can get by with cows, but look at this number.
Hmm.
And I'm an economics guy. I love good business, and you couldn't, I couldn't ignore it.
Yeah.
And that was another huge lesson that gross margin on sheep is very deceiving. And it is, especially when you scale it, like that number is nothing but a number on a projection.
Yeah.
And like here's an example. When we run a gross margin now for as a projection, we pencil in a 75% land crop
Okay.
because I mean, we almost always do better than that now.
Uh-huh.
But the year we did that, we had our wreck, we need a 10% land crop.
Yeah.
So on average, like all of our ULAMs, no matter how many ULAMs we have on our projections, we will project a 75% land crop. Like that's a number you can go off of when I can sleep at night. Like if we can make that number work in our economics, we're good.
Hmm.
But where we had made a mistake is, well, the year before we had averaged like 150% lamb crop.
Hmm.
So times 1200, like that's where my math went.
Yeah.
And it's like, whoa, no, we cannot do that. So that's what I say, they're misleading. Like once you get to a scale, I don't know how exactly to explain it, but once you go from,
Yeah.
once you get over, let's say 100 head,
Uh-huh.
like the production just goes down. Like every 100 head you add to that, your production just seems to not like it doesn't go way down. Like we'll still, a normal year, we'll still read 120 to 140, 50% lamb crop.
Mhm.
And that's unassisted on pasture. Like it's decent. But it's certainly different when you go over 100 head.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely. Definitely. Cool. Um, so the ranching for profit though, I mean, did that help you with like I mean, did you make any connections with anybody there that had sheep, or you just knew the economics of sheep after
That
insulin
that's
it?
probably, yeah. So I went to the Ranch and Profit School, and the school was fantastic. And probably the biggest value in the school was the people I met. And I was at this mindset that there's only a few good ranchers I know that have good care sheep. And then I went to Ranching for Profit, and then I joined their executive link program after that. And there's 50 hair sheep producers, and you can
Really?
go talk to all these people, and it's like, holy cow, there's more people in the world than the three that I know that
Yeah.
have good
Yeah.
hair sheep. So that's why we were able to scale,
Cool.
because we found 1,200 of them
Hmm.
from one guy, or actually it was from two different guys that, but finding that many ewe lambs off two ranches was hard to do before I went to there. So before I went to that school. So probably the most value that anything out of that school or their executive like program has brought to us has been the people that you meet there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, there's relationships like that. We have several mentors now. We have a business coach out of that. I talk to people weekly that I used to be on their executive like boards. Um, they'll call and run ideas past me. I call and run ideas past them, and so that community is really powerful. It's really it's also really encouraging because there's other people who have had wrecks like we have had, and you can call them and talk to them, and it's like makes you feel less ridiculous.
I
That makes
know.
any sense.
Well, farming is so like isolating. Like you have your
Yeah.
partner, your wife, and I have Ryan, and but other than that, you know a few farmers around you that might have sheep or yeah, but that's good. That's good to always have connections for sure. I love making connections with any like it's not hard to be nice. Like just then you
Yeah.
can call them and ask a question if you have to.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so when you scaled to a large sheep flock that big, I mean, from 60 to 1,200, you said?
Yeah.
Yeah. So like, what were your like, okay, I gotta get this and this and this and make sure I had those in place for that many head. Because well, when you were on leased land, talk about fencing, I guess, first. Like, were you guys
Yeah.
set up for sheep with like a hard wire fence around some of those or yeah, talk about fencing.
Sure, sure. So when we started with cattle, all of our fences were two-strand electric. We had posts 90 feet apart, and that actually worked for our 60 U's, just because we never gave them a reason to push it.
Mhm.
Um, So we had switched that to, um, we had switched a few fields to 4 strands of electric in attempt to bring these new ewes in and train them to, because they were not broke to electric. But we thought, hey, if we can just break these things to electric, the rest of our farm, we'll just keep our 2 strand cattle. And again, it's working for these 60. Why wouldn't it work for 1,200?
Yeah, yeah.
And then the difference was when you put 1,200 ewes in a field, even if it's 100 acres, like they will go through that so quick, and they never stop walking, it seems like. And they're always like they have a odor to them, and every step they take, they drop a scent, and they don't like to eat where they've already walked.
Okay.
So they will constantly, they'll go and we call it, they'll dirty a paddock
Oh,
really quickly, especially when there's that many of them. And then they don't like to come back to it. And they will. We force them to now. But unless it's going to rain or anything on it, they would much rather eat grass that has not been walked on.
mhm.
And then also just the amount of forage that they eat. Um, we started pressuring fences, and we had to go through as fast as we can ahead of that group of ewes and switch it all from 2 strands to 4 strands, um, to keep them in. And then even then, so that's what we have now. We have all 4 strand electric fences as our perimeter. Our interiors are, two, three, and 4 strands, depending on where they're at and how much pressure they get.
I see.
Um, there's certain fences like way down in the bottoms where our sheep, unless they go down to water, they never go down there. They always, our fences that are up high on a ridge are the ones that are important. They just like to be up high. They like to be out in the open.
Okay.
Um, so that fencing system works for 10 months out of the year.
Okay.
February and March are the 2 worst months on the farm because, like last year, we hit 70 degrees in February, and we drew like 2 inches of green grass. And the sheep were like, "Oh, this is awesome!" And then they again, you have a volume of ewes going through a field, and I'd say our average paddock size is 100 acres. So when you put them through there, if you have 800 ewes in a group, they'll clean up 2 inches on 100 acres in a day, and of fresh green grass. So when they tasted that taste, like they got a taste of it, and then they didn't want to eat winter stockpile anymore.
Oh
They
yeah.
wanted the neighbor's green grass. So until we actually got into, and so what happened in February is we grew that 2 inches of green grass, then it got cold again.
Okay.
And so we didn't grow any more grass for another 60 days, but there was 2 inches all around all of our neighbors, and so it didn't matter what kind of fence you had, you could not keep those sheep in. And it caused a lot of anxiety for me.
Yeah.
And it actually ruined some relationship with neighbors because they would have, our sheep were in their hayfield. We were out in their cover crops. We were out so those 2 months are like, I dread them every
Yes.
year.
Yes.
So now what we do is we go through and we have fields that they're close to our fence chargers. We know we can get them lightning hot, and we have
Yep.
a good 4 strand fence. We mow them with a skid loader and a mower, get them perfect. And then we'll come inside of that with 2 strands of polywire on a
Okay.
separate fence charger, usually a
Oh,
battery charger. So
okay.
we have a double fence for those 2 months, and it's going to be some work as we rotate around, keeping that up, but that's way less,
Yeah.
um, laborsome than dealing with angry neighbors.
Yes,
So
definitely, definitely. I totally understand where you're coming from with that. We just had that problem with us. Obviously, not the neighbor problem, just them getting out. Like, and I don't remember when ours was. It doesn't matter, but it was probably March or something. But the same kind of, they were like, forget these fences. Like, I'm just getting out and I'm doing whatever. And yeah, we let them kind of because our property's big enough. But oh my goodness, yeah, it's
yeah,
stressful to just be like, where are the sheep today? Like, hopefully they're close, you know.
yeah, and it takes a lot of effort to re-break them to
Yeah,
electric and get them to respect it again. And it's almost like you have to wait till the growing season comes around and they forget about it.
yeah.
And yeah,
But I
it's
like
a
that
pain.
idea of two chargers and stuff. That's an interesting thought.
Yeah, and what we found them doing is they would figure out the fence. They would understand they could get out, and they would put their head down and they just run through our 4 strands. And so our fence chargers just pulse, and so they weren't getting shocked, and they would do it so quick that even I think if they did time it correctly with their little bit of like our hair sheep get a little bit, I don't want to say woolly, but they have a winter coat
Mhm.
on at that time. It's pretty insulating.
Yeah.
And so they would just blow through it, like literally run at full speed to get through it. And so two fences, they can't do that. They have to kind of duck under it. Like they can do it through one, but they can't get through two.
Uh,
And it also hopefully offsets your timing of your pulses so that if one's on and the other one's, if they click at different times,
yeah, yeah. So
you,
they're offset like right
yeah,
beside.
like
Oh,
right
okay.
beside each other, like maybe 18 inches apart or 20, maybe 2 feet apart. Our two
Okay.
strand polywire will be right inside of our exterior perimeter fence.
Okay. You poor things. Yeah, that is a lot of work. But saying for 2 months out of the year. And you mow
Yeah,
those
yeah,
pathways too.
yeah,
Yeah. Uh-huh.
yeah,
That's what we're trying to face. Because with our problem that we had, we ended up buying electric netting. We're like, we have to be able to keep them in. And we found there's benefits with electric netting to have, at least have it and have
yeah.
some type of hard fence, not just um poly braid or,
Sure,
high
sure.
tensile. But yeah, that's interesting. I like the two set, like offset.
Yeah, yeah.
So I did want to take a break really quick and tell you guys how this episode is being brought to you. Austin has an awesome course on his website, Crossroads Land and Livestock, where it has a guide on livestock guardian dogs and then also a portable sheep corral and fencing course where he lays out what he does with his and how he sets up his sheep corral system. He and his wife Maggie have put together a discount code for Feed the Sheep podcast listeners. So if you go to the checkout and type in FTS10 at checkout, you guys can get 10% off on that guide and then also their course. So we hope that you enjoy that and get lots of information from both of those resources. What else? So like facilities.
Sure.
What else did you think was super important to have?
We the only other thing we really have, to be honest, we're about as low input as you can get. Like we don't do anything lambing. We don't ever we self wean all of our ewe lambs. Like we have very, very minimal infrastructure and very, very minimal inputs. The one thing we did buy is we went and bought a good set of 8-foot panels. There's a company in Maryland that makes them. It's called DNS Livestock, and they just make their galvanized metal. And I like them because we went tried it. We looked at aluminum, and aluminum is great. It's lightweight, but when you crowd 1,200 using it with their lambs, they put too much pressure on it, and I was afraid they're going to break aluminum. So we went with galvanized metal, and they're a little heavier. Takes a little more work to set them up and tear them down, but they can hold a lot of pressure. Like it's the ewes don't bust them. So we went and bought. I think we have like 68-foot panels, and we just set up a bud box, and we would have a couple catch pens, and we will use some netting for the back of those just as big catch pens, and then we just funnel everything down into an alleyway that leads to a bud box, and that bud box has been awesome. Like me and my 5-year-old can run 1,000 ewes through there if we're sorting for something. My wife and I can work sheep and hold a conversation about something nothing involved with sheep. Like nobody has to yell at them. I get frustrated working in livestock when stuff doesn't flow. And I've looked at tubs, I've looked at a bunch of systems, and I've nothing has compared to the efficiency of a bud box for us. So it's great. We have an alleyway. That same company makes an alleyway that the sides can fold down so you can reach down in. And we have a 3-way sort gate at the end of it with a weigh scale. And all this stuff is just 8-foot sections that pin together. So we it's a little bit of elbow grease, but we tear it down, throw it in a livestock trailer, and go to the next farm. We just have one. We have 5 locations, and we just have one set of pens, and we move them around wherever we need them.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
it's also nice on leased ground because if you ever lose your lease, you don't have any permanent infrastructure there. You just take these panels with you and
definitely.
on to the next one.
Definitely. That's interesting that so you like a bud box versus like a dump tub. Because I was just telling Ryan, I was like, well, I don't know if a bud box would work. But he knows all that kind of stuff about bud box. So I'll have to tell him that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Cool.
once you get a flow going through the alleyway, like the other day we did it when we were sorting some ewes. Like my wife Maggie can stand all the way in the back, like of the catch pen,
Okay.
and the ewes will just walk single file, and they'll just file right down your like Nobody moves. Like she stands in the back and I stand in the front with that sort gate and we can sort 1,000 ewes and nobody has to like, you literally can just stand there. They'll just all come down the alleyway.
Yeah.
It's really cool.
Yeah.
It's slick. If
Yeah.
you can keep that flow going, yeah, it's hard to beat.
Cool. Cool. Awesome. Do you guys have your herding dogs still?
Yes.
Yeah. Do you have one or two, or have just you don't have to
We've
talk about it in detail, but quickly, did you find that two didn't work, or yeah?
we so we bought a retired trial dog, which a lot of people say don't do that, but we did. It was kind of a hybrid dog. We did a lot of ranch work. And then it was also a trial dog. We bought him, he was 8 years old, and he is really, really good. He's old enough now that he's kind of lost his sharpness on whistles. But he like commands, why I can control every step that dog takes just with voice commands. Um, and I'm a very basic trainer, I'm a very basic handler. I am not a good dog handler, but our other dog, we've actually bought and sold several dogs. We've actually had good luck buying them from the UK. We found there's so many good sheep dogs in the UK that it's been cheaper to buy them an airplane ticket and to get them here than it is to buy a trained dog in the United States because they're so bloody expensive. So we've been through some dogs now, and we basically have a dogs that can work on whistles and dogs that don't. And so if we're ever running two, that's what we do. We've got some pups right now, or we've got, I should say, one pup, and she doesn't have much training yet, so she basically just stays in the back with us and just drives, and she's really good at that. And our older dog kind of does the finesse, and he'll listen to everything we say. But I'm certainly not an expert on border collies. I love them, and we use them all the time, but I'm
Yeah.
I'm a very poor handler.
Yeah, yeah. Do you find that I mean, well, I guess when you have when you have that many, you would probably need one, I would
Yeah,
think.
it's actually probably the place where they come in for us, like the place that they're the most handy is we have some really steep country and it's hard to get, like you can't get a four-wheeler across it. Like
Oh,
you'll roll it. And so we can, for safety and for the sake of time, unless you have a horse, and I'm not a horse guy. I love horses. I know nothing about them. Someday maybe, but we can send dogs over the hill, and instead of having to go up and down these dangerous hills, or we have a lot of brush. We have a lot of there's an invasive species here called autumn olive bushes, and we can send our dogs into the brush and they'll bring the ewes out, that kind of a thing.
wow.
Once we get our ewes in a big group, the dogs kind of lose their effect because the group is so big that it's only the back 10% can actually see the dog, especially like driving and things. They're just not they're not strong enough to move that many ewes. Like that's when our four wheelers and side by sides come in place.
I'm interested to find, do you like, are you in front? Do you have one person in front and then people behind, or, your dogs and maybe your wife behind, and you're in front with a four-wheeler, or how does that go? Move in large groups?
We almost always just exclusively drive. We'll
Mhm.
go to the back of the field, and the dogs just kind of work half circles behind us, and they're kind of used to just driving. So
Okay. Interesting.
the sheep don't lead it for us. We just once we go in there and start gathering ewes, they just kind of group together quick,
Yeah.
and then we just drive them wherever we need to
Okay.
go. So
Okay.
I'm
Yeah.
not saying that's certainly probably not the most efficient way to do it. It's just what we do.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that makes sense. And then your livestock guardian dogs. I have a question with that, like, because
Sure.
you guys would probably have quite a few with that many sheep. I've just always wondered how many you need per head of sheep. Have you figured that out yet? Like a secret number? I don't know if there's a thing for that.
So we haven't found it to be necessarily based on the number of sheep you have. It's more on the acreage that you're on.
Okay. Okay.
Our big group of ewes, we only have two dogs in it. But they stay in one group, and there's two mature dogs that are just bomb proof. Like they're awesome dogs. The kind of dog I don't want to sell for, like, there's no amount of money that could buy that dog. Um, we only need two dogs. We don't have problems. When we had 1,400, we don't have that many right now because we've been so dry. But when we had 1,400 ewes, I think we had three or four. And then we've had quite a few litters of puppies between now and then. The only time we ever have more than two or three dogs in a group is if we're training puppies to sell, which we do a lot of that. But as far as necessity,
Mhm.
2 dogs is I think there's very few operations in the eastern United States that need more than 2 dogs.
Okay.
No matter how many ewes you have, as long and even if you are on a really big landscape, the ewes are almost always together,
Yeah.
and they almost more importantly, they almost always sleep together. Like at night, like they're always going to be grouped up, flocked up together in a tight bunch. And it actually, I don't like riding with one dog just because we do have a ton of coyotes here.
Yeah.
I have seen our dogs fight coyotes and kill coyotes, things like that. And if you get a big group of coyotes in there, I feel so much better about work like having 2 dogs and 2 dogs just tend to work like they kind of get a little bit of companionship from each other and they just tend to work in a team. They're really fascinating to watch, but 2 dogs just seems to pair well. Like they like click, like it's like they're buds, and they know their job and they go work together and they do it.
Okay. Okay. Cool. Well, yeah, we just got a third and we only have like 130 ewes. So Ryan will be good to hear that because he'll be like, okay, no more. We don't need, because I was like, well, maybe our goal is eventually 500, hopefully. I was like, well, maybe we need five. I don't know. Like, because of coyote protection, I just thought that we need that many. But okay,
Yeah,
that's
we
interesting.
actually have. Oops, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, it's just like you're saying, like when they at least group together at night, that's when you're probably gonna have the most. But I just didn't know if like coyotes during the day with baby lambs. I don't know.
We don't have a lot of coyote problems with baby lambs. In fact, our biggest predator problem, like by far, is birds of prey. Like we have black-headed buzzards and we have bald eagles, and those two kill far more lambs than any land-based predators. I
Really?
would say our dogs are. I would be confident enough to just say our dogs are 100% effective on land-based predators. But with the birds, that's when a big group of dogs would be handy. But even with a big group, we had an experience 2 summers ago where it was a smaller group of ewes. There was a couple hundred in it, but they were fall lambing ewes, and we lambed in the fall, and our lambs were doing awesome. And a flock of like 30, maybe 40 black-headed buzzards found our ewes and found them lambs, and we didn't wean a single lamb. Like they killed our entire lamb crop. And they would come down and they land on a lamb, and the dogs would take off running, across the 100 acres to go chase it off. Well, they just fly back to the other end, and they would just wear the dogs out. Like the dogs were defenseless.
Oh,
Like I mean, they couldn't do it. And finally, they just go lay down under a shade bush because they were exhausted,
yeah.
and so we lost a pile of lambs to that. We were able to get or we actually didn't get them. We actually ended up selling that group of ewes quickly because we realized what was going on. But we sold them to a guy who was doing some confinement lambing, where he could lamb them inside. So it worked out well there. But I later learned we can get kill permits for black-headed buzzards. You can't get a lot of them, but we could have got some where we could have legally went in and shot a couple of those to help or protect the lambs. But I didn't know it at the time,
Yeah.
and yeah, so that was another learning experience.
Oh my gosh, you poor thing. Somebody told me that it's the first 5 years that are the worst. I don't remember if that was, I think it was just with farming overall. I'm like, I don't know. Ugh. So
Well,
maybe you're almost out of it. I don't know.
yeah, we're year 6, so maybe we're in the clear.
That sucks. Do you do fall lambing and spring lambing?
We are we bought a couple groups of ewes last year from a mentor of mine. We lambed one of them in January and one of them in March, which is normally earlier than we'd lamb, and they did really really well. And the biggest reason we're exploring fall lambing is because when we lamb in the spring, our lambs are ready to like our target weight is like 65 pounds. That's the carcass value that pays us the highest value of gain. Tends to be 65 pounds. We hit that in August, which is the absolute worst month of the year to sell sheep in the commodity markets. So my options basically become feed them from August to January to a higher market, but that's a long enough period of time that they eat enough feed that the value we gain is not worth the feed we put into them. So that doesn't work. So we were exploring lambing in the fall, trying to lamb ideally September, October, so that we have January, February lambs to hit a much higher market. And it didn't affect us when we were as a smaller producer because all of our ewe lambs were either being kept or getting sold as breeding stock. But we've hit a scale that we can't, uh, even if we do, and most of our ewe lambs still will go as breeding stock, but we have a significant amount of ram lambs here now that if we can add $50 a head to their carcass value because of the time of the year, it makes a huge difference in the overall profitability of our operation. So that's why we're looking at it. We've also really liked it for ewe lambs if we can get them to breed for fall because you give them the whole summer to keep growing and you have them lambing as your parasite load is decreasing. Like going into fall, going into winter, parasite load dramatically weakens. And so you're taking her into that lactation period during a weakening parasite cycle versus a spring when it's just getting ramped up, ready to take off. Um, so we're I'm no fall lambing expert. This year we exposed our homegrown group of ewes here to breed for fall lambing, and all we didn't tease them at all. We didn't flush them at all. We didn't do anything like that or synchronize them. We just put rams in with them early, and we had a 65% breed up in the first 60 days. So we thought that was pretty good. So we've sorted that group out. We ultrasounded them, sorted that group out, and they are now we're trying to convert them to being a fall lambing group every year on repeat if we can. But this is the first year we've bred our own for fall. We've lambed a lot of fall lambs, but we've always been the ones that we've bought.
I see. Okay. Yeah, that's what we're trying to navigate that too. Cause like we're keeping all of our ewe lambs, trying to grow our numbers, but trying to figure out what market we want to hit. We're going to try to sell here in November to hit the Christmas market, but we've never done that before. So do you have any experience with all of that? I mean, just like it sounds like you're experimenting, trying to figure out which market is the best, but
yeah. So I'm not an expert. I know there's a lot of holidays to target. We've tried it in the past targeting Easter, and we've had mixed results. So many other producers time everything to hit Easter that the year we did it, there was a huge surplus of Easter lambs and not enough buyers. So we actually got docked pretty heavy with Easter lambs. That hasn't happened since, but it's something that we learned. Basically, I took our local sale barn here, which is Mount Hope, Ohio. It's one of the biggest. It's one of the two biggest in the eastern United States. And I put on a graph. I put their market reports for 3 years, and I graphed them out on a curve, and it basically does a big U over the course of the year. And if you start it in January, it kind of starts at a peak or at the upper end, and it kind of stays high, and then as soon as you get past Easter, it starts to decline pretty quick until about August. And then it slowly starts increasing again back to January. So to make it simple, it just does a big U and August being the bottom. So that is exactly when our springborn lambs are ready. And so basically the further away from August you can get, the better you are in general. And that's a very broad strategy, but that's where we're at.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. I think that's all that I had. I'm trying to think of what else to ask you. I don't know. I know that we need to get going.
Oh no, you're fine. I'm good.
Okay, let's just go into so if you were to give anybody advice on growing to like a profitable number, after your experience that you've been through, going from 60, because that's kind of what we're doing, or we went from like 25 and just slowly growing. We're like, okay, this will be good. Like just go slow. But would you do it over again if you had a little bit more knowledge? Would you, or would you have grown slowly? What advice do you have for people that want to get to a profitable number fast, but
It's a tricky question to answer. There's so many factors in it, but a couple thoughts I have on it is first off, wherever you decide to get sheep from, don't just talk to the guy or gal on the phone. Go to their place, look at their ewes. look at, is anybody limping? Like, is there a single sheep limping? If there is, don't buy it. Do not buy foot rot in. We've done that in the past, and it was another reason we almost lost our business. Um, so know the source you're getting your sheep from. Know the history. Know that, like, call to get, ask for their vet's phone number. Ask them to talk to their, like, let me understand everything you do to these ewes or don't do to these ewes. Um, and then the other thing would just be like, don't be afraid to worm and vaccinate sheep. There's a huge movement in regenerative ag, and it's most of it is awesome. But the idea that we can never worm anything, and you can never use any kind of vaccines or any even chemicals, is if you want to go that far. This is all the end goal. You don't have to start with that. Like let's pay our bills. Let's ease into all this stuff and let's build parasite resistance. Let's build, like, right now with our homegrown grown flock of ewes, we don't vaccinate anything because they don't go anywhere. They're not exposed to anything. We've never had an issue with them since. But when we bring new sheep in, we do. So there's a protocol there, but don't be afraid in the beginning to give them what they need, give them the best shot, make whatever your end management goal is a 3-year goal. Don't do it the first day they get there.
Yes.
Man, I wish I would have known that when we started this. It would have saved me literally hundreds of thousands of dollars. So it's been a hard lesson. But and then as far as getting there quickly, there's kind of two ways to do it. Like you can either do what we did and jump in and do it. And I would do that again. Like if I sold every sheep we had here again, I would go buy 1,200 ewe lambs again, but I would do it in a much different way. Um, or you can do it slowly. And I don't know which one's best. I wouldn't never give anybody advice on that. It probably depends on your financial situation, your personality, what your goals are, how badly you need to return your money, how much time you have to work with, things like that. But you can do it. You can do it by keeping your own genetics. That's probably the safest way to do it. But it just takes, but sheep, it doesn't take near as long as cattle, but it takes time. Um, so yeah, and there's if anybody had a question on this, I would be more than happy to help somebody not do what I did. So yeah, like I'd be happy to help there if I could.
Yeah. Well, talk about you do consulting, right? I saw that on your website. Talk about that a little bit, and your
Sure.
courses as well.
Sure. The consulting is to be honest, it started with my wife had built a social media following, and it had grown to the point where I couldn't keep up with the amount of questions and messages that I was getting. And there was two kinds of people. There was people that were just like extremely nosy and wanting free information, and then there was people who genuinely needed help. And I didn't have a way to separate those, and I was trying to value my time as well. So we started a consulting business, basically to sort out the people who actually need help. And I do charge money for it. It is expensive, but it values my time. And if I could pay myself what I charge 5 years ago, like I can't tell you how much that would have paid me back. And I'm not trying to sell myself as a consultant. I'm just explaining why I do it. I love helping people. I don't want anybody just to go through what we went through. It was very stressful on our business and on our marriage and everything else. So I don't want that to happen to anybody else. So I'm more than happy to do that. But because I do value my time and I have a family, I do charge for it. We also we've got a couple courses on our website, and probably the main one being, well, the two we have right now are just it's a very basic guard dog training course. The biggest obstacle that we see when customers are looking to buy sheep is they're overwhelmed by guard dogs. And if I can have good guard dogs, it sells sheep. And if I can explain to people how to, like, the very basics of guard dog, like receiving them, training them, what to do, what not to do, how to correct any mistakes, things like that, they have so much more confidence actually making the jump and getting into sheep. So we created a course for that. And then the second thing we probably get asked the most is what is your working facility like? Like, what's your handling system? So we did a little bit of we flew a drone up in the air and kind of we worked some sheep through this bud box. It's just a series of panels, like I mentioned, in a field that we just set it up and flew a drone up, and then I kind of break it down and explain everything. I show you where we got it. I show you the dimensions. how to build one. You can make it out of just about anything. But um, those are the two courses we offer right now, and it's just to try and help people.
Yeah, no, I love that too. I don't know. That's why I'm doing this. My husband's always like, "Why are you doing?" I'm like, "I just like helping people." I don't like I don't
Yeah.
know. When you hear somebody and they're like, I finally got into sheep, or we had a guy come and bought 5 sheep from us, and he's like, "I'm excited to get them home." I'm like, "This is your first set of sheep. I'm excited for you too. That's awesome."
Yeah.
So yeah,
Yeah.
it's always good to help people, and it's so fulfilling. I mean, I'm sure you could speak to that with your kids and having your wife out there be able to help you. It's different than cattle in a way. I still love the cattle, but I don't know, sheep are different and more. I don't know, they're fun too. So
Yeah. They hurt a little bit less when you get run over too, especially for the kids.
yeah, more safe, a little bit more safe.
Yeah.
And then the last thing I wanted to touch on, so do you still have any sheep for sale, or speak to that really quick? I know that you guys posted that you had some a while
Yeah,
back.
we do. We do. We have got well, we've got a lot for sale. We we are so dry this year. We are as dry as Ohio has been in over 100 years, and it's been absolutely crazy. So we have destocked dramatically to get through winter because, like I said, we don't feed any hay, we don't have a tractor, etc. So yeah, we've destocked a bunch, and we do still have some used to sell. We've had a lot of sales, but yeah, we've still got some to go. Um,
You
so
guys
yeah,
sell some throughout, I mean, like even when you're not in a drought, you guys sell stock.
yeah. Every year, that's I guess the bread and butter of our business is
Okay.
selling breeding stock of hair
Yeah,
sheep.
perfect.
So
Cool.
yeah, yeah.
Okay, cool. And then I'll leave all the links to your website. Where can people find you on? Are you guys on Instagram and then your website?
Yes,
Those really quick.
it's just
Okay.
crossroadslandandlivestock.com.
Okay.
And that's our handle on Instagram. So
Cool.
yeah,
Cool. Awesome. Well, yeah, thank you so much for coming on and talking to
sure
me.
thing.
Oh my
Absolutely. I
goodness.
enjoyed it.
Oh, I am sure so many people can get a lot of information out of this and just, I don't know, hopefully make the leap into building a profitable sheep flock, and maybe they'll jump in with a 1,200 head. You never know. They'll
There
be
you go.
calling you for consulting. Okay, I did it,
There we go.
Austin. Now what do I do?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
I would love to help.
yeah, yeah. Perfect.